on a disk floating through space with a tiny sun.
Hey, I'm Fight the Flat Earth and welcome back to the channel that dangles stupidity off the tall building, makes it beg for its life and then just drops it anyway. So tonight, I thought I would have a little chat with Lemonbird after his discussion with McToon last night. If you guys didn't see McToon's debate with Lemonbird last night, it's linked in the description of this and there should be a card somewhere if you click on up there, that side. So, Lemonbird, how did you think your debate with McToon went?
It was pretty civil. A bit of an impasse. Neither side, will concede to the other. But a lot of times, I just look at these debates as a chance for the audience to see, both sides and just decide for themselves.
Fair enough. Was there anything that you didn't get to discuss with him that you wanted to?
Uh, let's see. The main thing is if the Earth, a ball spinning through space, potentially you could just, hover in midair while your destination arrives beneath your feet, like in an airplane or a hot air balloon or something. But
Okay.
this doesn't seem to be the case.
Do you know why on our model that isn't the case?
They say something like the atmosphere is Velcro to the Earth,
Okay.
something like that.
Not really Velcroed, but okay. Now you see the globe I'm holding in my hand, right? Now,
Yeah.
okay, so if the atmosphere, if this was representative of the Earth, the atmosphere would be like 1,000th of a millimeter off of the surface of this ball, and because relative to the size of the ball, the atmosphere isn't very big. As the Earth is spinning, it's literally dragging the atmosphere behind it. So there isn't a literal 100%. It's exactly stuck to it, but that the reason it does spin with the Earth is because of the friction of the Earth turning, and over millions and millions of years, that friction has taken it to a stage where the atmosphere pretty much spins with the Earth. So if you're in an airplane, it uses the atmosphere. The atmosphere is spinning with the Earth. So if the airplane takes off from the equator, it maintains that velocity of 1,000 miles an hour that the equator spins. So as soon as it goes in the air, it doesn't lose that velocity and the Earth turn underneath it. It's already spinning as fast as the Earth is. So when it goes in the air, it's going 1,000 miles an hour plus whatever the airspeed is. So the main point is that it has to use the atmosphere, which is in effect turning with the Earth because of friction.
Interesting. I'm seeing something about laminar adhesion in the chat. But that is all well and good and a nice explanation. But the thing is, you can sometimes see the atmosphere going in two different directions. There are people that have seen the atmosphere go at 90 degrees in one layer to another layer below it. And I have seen cloud videos on YouTube where the cloud layers appear to be going in two different directions. So if that's the case, empirically that kind of goes against this velcroing of the atmosphere to the Earth if you have two different layers going in two different directions.
Well, what you have to understand is within the atmosphere there is still winds and everything happening, but and yeah, that is going to increase the speed the atmosphere is moving in certain places. But relative to the actual speed the Earth is rotating, it's still in effect the atmosphere is moving with the Earth, and those storm systems and high and low pressure systems are moving within the atmosphere that is moving with the Earth. So all those pressure systems you see, moving clouds in different directions, they are relatively still rotating with the planet.
Well, I guess another explanation, that we could cobble together, if you wanted to go from, say, a flat Earth perspective, is that the ether is swirling above the stationary Earth. and that any Coriolis effects that you may note, with anything would be from the spinning ether over a stationary, flat, unmoving Earth. And it seems like you could probably defend that with, different layers of clouds going different directions, as opposed to both all the clouds being velcroed somehow to the Earth and still going in two different directions and stuff like that. It seems like the spinning ether would be able to accommodate that a little better.
So it's your contention that the ether is what's causing storm systems and stuff like that?
You can akin the ether to cake batter. If you've ever taken like a chocolate cake and stirred it up, when you run the spoon through the cake batter, which would be like the ether, you get a trail that's marked in the batter, and the batter basically is spinning in two different directions around the spoon. Basically that's going through the batter. On one side, it's coming toward the spoon in one direction, and in another direction, it's coming toward the spoon in the other direction. And so the spoon, I guess, would be akin to the sun or the moon, swirling through the batter of the ether, leading to different spin patterns, electromagnetically, maybe.
Okay, so I guess the question I would need to ask is there any evidence that the luminiferous aether is actually a thing? Because all my research indicates, looking at the Michelson-Morley experiment, the Michelson-Gale experiment, going on to the LIGO detector, which is basically a massive Michelson-Morley experiment, they completely disproved that the aether exists. So do you have any evidence that the aether is actually a real thing?
It really just depends on who you ask. If you ask, someone from, say, one perspective, they'd say that the Sagnac experiment reproved the ether because the light is going slower against. They're making an interference pattern as the light returns to the mirror. It's going slower against the mirror, but faster with the ether.
Yeah. So the Sagnac effect actually perfectly demonstrates that the aether doesn't exist as well. For instance, using a fiber optic gyro, which the principle of how it operates is using the Sagnac effect, actually perfectly demonstrates that the Earth is rotating, because the gyroscope in effect is maintaining its position fixed relative to the distant masses of the universe. So the interference pattern you see is from the actual rotation of the device. And that's why the Sagnac effect shows that the light would be going faster at one side and slower at the other, because the actual device itself is moving. And especially with the fiber optic gyroscope and ring laser gyroscopes, they're totally encased, and I don't think they would be affected by heavenly energies, as Bob put it.
Well, I mean, the thing is, the alternative appears to be these Lorentz contractions where the universe contracts and expands to meet, light and stuff. At that point, we're getting into relativity and this, universe where, the universe expands and contracts to meet light. I mean, a simpler explanation would be that the ether exists, it's swirling over a rotating Earth, and that is what's making the light slower against the ether versus faster with the ether, and making the interference pattern on the mirrors or on the plate.
No. Again, the fiber optic gyroscope, it doesn't react to anything outside of itself. It's literally only measuring what's going on within the gyroscope. It can't measure the energy of the stars or electromagnetic waves going. It literally just measures the physical rotation of itself, which is why you have three of them on an airplane. One to measure pitch, one to measure yaw, and one to measure roll. And the fact that when you have them in a certain configuration, one on the side, I think one on the top, one underneath, and the data it feeds back can give the pilot the what it needs to be able to keep the horizon level. And if you have all these fiber optic gyros in different positions, then surely they would be reading totally different things from this swirling aether that you're talking about.
Well, the thing is, it appears that the findings were wrapped around a Copernican heliocentric bias, because it looked like Michelson-Morley did detect an ether, but it wasn't at the speeds that they expected. They expected the Earth to be, they were basically holding on to Copernicanism and the Earth moving through space, and they thought that the ether existed too. So they said, the Earth has to have an ether wind as it's moving through the ether. They didn't detect the ether wind that they expected at like 30 kilometers an hour or something like that. It was lower than that. They did get a result at 1 to 10, but the implications of their experiment were one of two. Either the ether didn't exist and Earth was still moving, it's just moving through nothing, no ether, which is what they chose, or the other alternative, which they wouldn't accept, was that the Earth isn't moving at all, it's stationary, and at best you have gently swirling ether over the Earth. So to maintain the paradigm, they did what they had to do.
Right. So the thing about that is then experiments based on relativity show that space time is a thing, and when you can confirm relativity in space time, that actually completely removes the need for any kind of aether within physics. Regardless of if you can say that the Michelson-Morley experiment detected some kind of aether wind or not, it's the fact that then we can actually not need any aether to make the calculations we need to observe and understand the universe and fit to the model that we use. Einstein literally got rid of any need to have aether in the calculations. So if everything works without the need for an aether, then surely that's pretty good evidence that the aether isn't actually a thing.
Depends. I mean, this mindset where numbers are reality as opposed to representing a portion of reality or a rough representation of reality is very Pythagorean and kind of like a number cult, a cult of people stuck in their brains all day and theorizing with numbers as opposed to checking whether or not the experiments validate their results. I feel like we're kind of on, that side where we're theorizing, but not really seeing if the experiments validate our assumptions.
Okay.
Depending on who you ask, the Sagnac effect reproved the ether, and it has been redone, and it supports the ether. And ether is, very logical. This neutral electric sea that swirls all around us that can store charge, become charged, uncharged, magnetic, paramagnetic, non-magnetic. It looks like it would be a place where all this extra charge and energy would be stored, giving you free energy quite literally from the air, and the stars and heavenly bodies are swirling, around us.
That would be wonderful, but like, for instance, the LIGO detector, which you can agree is basically a massive Michelson-Morley experiment. How do you explain the detection of gravitational waves?
It looks like they didn't want to admit that the ether existed, and they just abolished it. So they're trying to massage the working parts of the ether theory back into their preferred paradigm with stuff like quantum fluid.
You didn't answer the actual question there. LIGO
Yeah.
has literally more than once now detected gravitational waves from places that they calculated it would be. How do you explain that? Doesn't that kind of show that the something like the Michelson-Morley experiment was actually detecting something other than ether?
It could be, but we are human and we have biases. And so I would suspect that they're wrapping the observations around their preferred paradigm. My preferred paradigm is flat, stationary, and unmoving. And I'm going to take whatever observations they have and wrap it around that paradigm. In particular, a geostationary, unmoving Earth with ether swirling gently above it. And that would give you your quote unquote waves, not this, zone at the center of the planet that's pulling stuff gravitationally. I mean, gravity is very hard to wrap your mind around. It's holding down all this water.
I really
But
don't think
stuff can
gravity
escape
is.
it.
Okay, so right, I think we'll move away from the aether because I'm pretty sure that was destroyed when Thanos destroyed the Infinity Gauntlet. But anyway, so gravity, it's really not that difficult to understand. Right now, what has more mass, the oceans or a butterfly?
The oceans, I assume.
Okay,
But
so,
the thing is,
let me carry on with this line of questioning to kind of try and explain where we are. So, if the oceans have more mass, then that means that they have more to be affected by the force of gravity. Okay? So, that butterfly to leave the Earth has to exert not very much force because it doesn't have much mass for the force of gravity to act on. So because gravity, the force of gravity that you feel is proportional to your mass. So your mass creates your weight, i.e. your weight is the force of gravity acting on your mass. So the ocean also wouldn't exert a force to escape the Earth. It doesn't do that. Whereas a butterfly uses its wings to exert lift, to create lift and exert a force, which doesn't have to do much because there isn't much force of gravity pulling down on the insect because it's a tiny little butterfly with not much mass. So you see what I mean? A butterfly doesn't need much force to leave the Earth, whereas something like a massive rock needs a lot of force to get off of the Earth because it's got more mass.
Well, I mean, the thing is, gravity is, exercising preferential attraction like it's some sort of sentient god or something, or some sort of sentient being that can choose and pick and choose what it attracts. And also, it's a subject without an object. Southern Protestant goes over the logical inconsistency with gravity attracting the same water differently based on basically how much water there is. I mean, essentially at that point, you have a force without an object. I mean, what is the gravity attracting, say, with water? Is it attracting the mass of the water or the water? Because that same water is in the butterfly. So it's attracting the same water that's in the butterfly and in the ocean, differently based on the amount of water. I see where you're going. No. So what is it attracting? Is it attracting the water, or is it attracting the mass of the water? This is logically absurd.
It's right. The material doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. It's the mass that is important. It's the material. It's not like magnetic where it will only affect a magnet. Gravity is a universal force. Everything attracts everything else because it's the attraction that we see is the effect of gravity, whereas the cause of it is space-time bending. Now, I suppose if I can try and break it down onto a two-dimensional plane for you, imagine a trampoline with a big bowling ball right in the middle of that trampoline, okay? We're saying the trampoline is space-time. So if you've got a big bowling ball in the middle of that trampoline, and then you put a marble near the edge of the trampoline, what's going to happen?
It's gonna sink in. It's gonna sink toward the bowling ball.
But there's no physical force causing it to do that, right? It's just because that trampoline has been warped, right? Now, that's exactly how gravity works, but on 3 dimensions, right? So the Earth is this massive mass in space, and it is literally warping the fabric of space-time to make other things move towards it. And the more massive, whatever the mass is that's causing the warping, the stronger that gravitational force is. The same way if you put a bigger bowling ball on the trampoline than before, it would make the marble go in quicker. But it's that effect, but on 3 dimensions. So gravity is the cause of gravity is the warping of this space-time. And the effect that we see is the force acting on a mass.
Well, the only thing is, if gravity works like that, you would see stuff sinking into gravity wells everywhere. Everything would just be in a big sink like a trash can. Orbits eventually wouldn't even be possible because, eventually stuff would just, sink into the gravity. I mean, logically, it's just very hard to wrap your mind around this stuff.
Right. So the other thing about gravity is that on the scale of the universe, it's actually the weakest of the 4 fundamental forces. Okay, the force of gravity is 1/50 millionth of the weight, of the mass of the object. That's the ratio is to the gravitational force to the mass, which is why you have to have the Earth is massive. It's really, really, really big, which is why it creates this gravitational well. But at the same time, this little aluminium YouTube button, it is creating its own gravitational well that is attracting everything around it towards it. But because the force of attraction is 1/50 millionth of the mass of this button, it's practically not noticeable compared to, say, the friction of air and the prevailing force of gravity of the Earth pulling everything down to it. So that's the reason why you don't just see everything creating orbits randomly, because gravity is actually not a very strong force. It literally depends on the mass, and there has to be a really big mass, i.e. the Earth, to create a perceivable force that we would notice.
Well, I mean, out of consistency, and love and justice,
Love.
my even my soul demands. Yes, my soul demands, a truth that is consistent across all boards, and this gravity thing is highly selective. How do you have a gravity force that is so weak? That it's overcome at the small scale by other forces, the strong force, the weak force, the nuclear force. And then all of a sudden, when you get more stuff, it overcomes these other forces and takes over. That's inconsistent. Justice
But
cries out against that. A mind
well,
that's
when
just
you look
and
at the equation, when you
thwarts that.
yeah, when you actually look at the equation for gravity, Fg equals g m1 m2 over r squared, it shows you that there is a proportional relationship to the mass. The mass is the important thing that actually causes how strong the gravity is, and it's not like a sudden change. Compared to everything we have here on Earth, even the biggest mountain is tiny compared to the Earth. But that doesn't mean that we can't demonstrate that particular attraction in other ways. Have you seen the video of a hanging weight having its weight increased by putting something underneath it?
Well, oh, you're putting up the video? Oh, I thought you were putting up something. But the thing is, what in the mass is doing the attracting. And also, another thing that's a problem with this whole mass attracting mass, what in the mass is doing the attracting. There's a lot of stuff in the mass. There's electrical energy in the mass, electrons, even by the current model, if that's correct, protons, neutrons. What exactly in the mass is doing the attracting? I mean, if you have a large mass, you're going to have a lot of that other stuff too, which might be doing the attracting. There may be electrical activity between
Okay,
these
right, sorry.
masses being, communicated through the ether or something. I mean,
Right.
there may be another way to interpret this without gravity pulling to the center of a ball and making perfect platonic shapes in this, universe. If we're on a flat plane, gravity becomes something else. Maybe it's an interaction between the medium and the object in the medium on an electrical energy density level.
Right, okay. If you just give me 1 sec, I'm going to quickly get a video to show you how it demonstrates that it is an attractive force. Sorry, my microphone actually disconnected there for a second, so I do apologize for that. Let me just get that. Right. Okay, so present. Okay, right. Audio.
To measure the force of attraction between it and the Earth. 52.16 between it and the Earth.
Right, okay, so
First, we weigh a small lead pyramid to measure the force of attraction between it and the Earth. Its weight is 152.166 grams.
you can hear that, yeah?
Now we move the heavy lead ball under the scale, adding its mass to the mass of the Earth. The weight has increased by 1/1000th of a gram, which represents the attraction between the pyramid and the ball. When the mass under the pyramid got bigger, the force of attraction did too.
Okay, so that shows that literally just increasing the mass directly underneath that weight with a lead ball, which gets rid of any kind of thoughts of magnetism because lead is actually diamagnetic. that shows that there was a proportional rise in the weight hanging down from that scale. And as I explained, weight is the force of gravity acting on a mass. So there was more mass creating the force of gravity, therefore the weight was stronger. And that shows that there is literally a directly proportional relationship between the mass and the gravitational force.
Well, maybe there's another explanation to gravity. Tesla had an alternate explanation of gravity called ether vortex gravity, in the ether and saying that it's swirling in and around everything, and its differential uptake into the object will lead to a downward vortex toward down. And this seems to be supported by the slinky, which appears to, when you drop it in slow motion, it appears to compress and then be pulled as a unit down, which could be the transfer of the ether vortex energy through the coils of the slinky downward. And then finally, when it's one unit, it is pulled down after it is compressed. And so this, has, possibilities for maybe explaining other phenomena, free energy from the air and the ether, as opposed to, thinking about gravity trash can wells into which, matter just, gets, turned. It's kind of an inversion of this occult satanic force, which reverses everything and thinking about the energy that's all around, flowing in and around things, as opposed to being, pulled into the pit.
Right. See that would say that the aether would. Sorry, can you hear me? All right, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Sorry, I keep pulling the wire out of my microphone. Sorry about that, guys. Right, so yeah, if you're saying it's the aether that would literally increase the downward force on that other object, then are we saying that the aether is coming from? Let's go back to that and play that again. So, are you saying the aether in this case would be emanating from the lead weight underneath?
No, there's a...
So
yes.
The thing is that the only thing that changed in this was when they added the lead weight underneath. Okay, nothing else changed. All right, so the only thing they did was they put a lead weight
mass to the mass of the Earth
underneath, and that literally just doing that increased the weight of the scales. The weight showing on the scales by
1,000th of a gram.
1/1000th of a gram. So for you to say that the aether caused that you would have to be saying that the aether was literally coming from the lead weight, because there's no other interaction. There's nothing. There's no other physical connection. There's nothing happening between those two things for this luminiferous aether to cause that increase in attraction, unless your contention is that the aether is emanating from the mass itself, which I don't think anyone would say.
Well, I would contend that the mass of ether that's flowing in and around us probably has another source. It's probably, some of the leftover electrical energy that's, from the swirling waters of above and or the great deep below us, leading to, all this, electrical energy from the movement of the water. Because moving water, especially water with ions, is going to generate electricity and energy. And that energy is probably going to make an electric current, like the electromagnetic current of the Earth, and release it into the ether or something. I'd have to, cobble together something to try to explain this. But what we consider mass and weight may be better understood as absorption of energy from all around. And when something absorbs a lot of energy, it takes on a lot of mass. And when it doesn't absorb a whole lot of energy, it tends to be light. Didn't Einstein say something to the effect that as an object takes on, energy, it takes on mass or something? I mean, there's breadcrumbs everywhere. It's just,
not really.
We gotta, make sure that we got the right paradigm.
What you did there is you made a lot of assumptions about what if this and what if that. And there's still no direct evidence that the aether exists when you have things like the LIGO detecting gravitational waves, which can't be explained by the aether. But
it's detecting ether, and that ether is being massaged back into their model, their non-functional gravity model.
Yep, but that's the thing. They are detecting gravitational waves from points that they thought that they would be detecting gravitational waves, confirming a lot of the calculations and theories behind relativity once again. So yeah, I don't think that the aether holds up when you look at all the variables behind it, and gravity is actually the much more simple explanation. More mass, more force. Yeah, it's not a literal force. It's an apparent force in the same vein that centrifugal acceleration is an apparent force. It's being caused by something else. In this case, the warping of space-time, which again has been confirmed with other experiments.
You're saying?
Sorry, carry on. No.
I was just going to say, another problem with this paradigm is it seems to be predicated on absolute mass and absolute energy being totally separate categories, as opposed to maybe being a continuum, and absolute space being over here as like a vacuum. Things tend to be in a bit more of a continuum. Even in the current model, most of the atom is empty space. So this paradigm where we need something like gravity to give us absolute matter and force matter into it, separate from energy, maybe we need something like a continuum. I mean, we have the genius Tesla, who's probably, responsible for our electrical grid, who didn't even think of the electron as this discrete piece of matter that flows, like through a tube or something. He talked about fields, like electrical fields of energy, as opposed to just discrete packets of matter over here, energy over here.
We know that the electron is 100% a thing, right?
Well, true. I'm just saying that this paradigm seems to be held up by gravity, giving you absolute matter separated from absolute space, with energy over here separate from this dead inert matter.
No, again, gravity is the weakest force. And literally it's just kind of what binds things together, and it's perfectly explained, and actually makes a lot more sense than having to invoke swirling ether vortexes that might have an electrical charge of waters above and everything. It's literally the more simple explanation. Warping of space-time by a mass causes an apparent force that we can calculate, and that's easily observed. And if any, I see FE News in the chat going, prove space-time bending. Just go and actually Google for once. Do some research yourself, and just Google experiments that prove relativity, and you'll find plenty. Okay, I'm not making this stuff up. It's kind of general knowledge that most people can find quite easily. So yeah, there is, as far as I can tell, no evidence for the aether that, when you follow through, actually makes any sense. And the video that I showed you is perfect example of that. The only thing that changed in that entire thing was an extra bit of mass being added underneath. And like I said, the aether doesn't come from the actual mass of the thing. So the aether just doesn't make sense in that situation.
Well, if you look at the ether like this, flow of water, like a watery like liquid, like Tales might have been trying to imply, thousands of years ago with the universe being water. If you have two bodies that are kind of still and stationary and something flows between them, that current is going to bring them together. It's similar with the ether going between that lead weight and that triangle weight on the top. As the ether swirls between those two, it's probably going to bring them together. And it's probably going to result in a quote-unquote an increase of mass as it quote-unquote accelerates downward. I mean, another problem with gravity is what about things that accelerate upward due to buoyancy? Are we going to have a reverse gravity force that's
No.
making stuff
Come
accelerate
on,
upward due
Lemon
to
Bird.
buoyancy?
Come on, Lemon Bird. We had this discussion quite extensively in our last debate that buoyancy literally requires a gravitational force pulling down for it to happen. I suppose the best way to think about buoyancy, right? If you've got a helium balloon that is lighter than the air, which means that the air has more mass. So there's more force pulling the air down than there is the balloon, which means that it pulls the air down around the balloon, making the balloon go up. That upward rise of a helium balloon is because there's a downward force acting on everything else. And that happens to be lighter and have a buoyant force. But again, that's that only happens because the more dense air is being pulled down around the balloon.
Well, I mean, I'm proposing a new paradigm, basically, that's to imply that the medium and the object in the medium is what gives you, quote unquote, the rules. If you're more energetic than the medium, you're probably going to rise like the balloon. And if you're less energetic than the medium of air, ether, and electrical energy or whatever, you're going to sink. So it's not going to be pulling to the center of a ball necessarily. It's just going to be rising and or falling through the medium.
Right. Okay. So would you say that the path, that the medium is determined by relative density? Is that what you're getting at? Relative density for things?
So relative energy density.
Relative energy density. So if I was to drop this globe, why would it accelerate towards the ground at 9.8 meters per second squared? What's actually causing that force?
Well, it's the swirling energy ether medium that we're in currently at ground level or whatever. It probably has certain energy, requirements. That ball is probably lower energy than the surrounding electrical ether energy, and it's going to sink until it finds an equilibrium layer down below our feet or whatever. And then it will accelerate upward like air or helium if it's higher energy. But maybe we could explore something that could work on a flat plane as opposed to having this post hoc gravity theory explain why we see perfect balls or whatever, and out of this assumption of, the Earth being a perfect ball that not be backed by lasers and other experiments that seem to show flat land instead of curved balls.
Let's not straw man off of the actual thing right now. So, let me get this straight. You're saying the excitation within an object, the energeticness of it, is what decides on its movement up and down in the relative density of everything, right?
Yes, we could cobble together this theory based off of.
I've got a really good question about that then. So if I was to heat this up to 20 degrees more, does that mean it's going to start floating because it's got more energy in it?
It might change its mass slightly, but it still has a certain energetic nature based off of its composition, most likely from the Lord our God. It's probably built to absorb certain amounts of energy and release certain amounts of energy. So it still has primary constitution that heating up may not be able to change too fundamentally.
Do you not see the issue there that you had to invoke God for it to make sense? That's an unverifiable thing. That is kind of a get out of jail free card for what you're trying to argue, because it doesn't make sense because God said so. I mean, I can't accept that. I really can't accept just because God said so, because then this whole argument makes no sense anyway.
Then insert whatever you wish, because I said so, because Satan said so, because gravity said so. There's going to be a bunch of stuff that we don't know about. And
how can you equate gravity to God and Satan when gravity is literally just an effect of something happening? It's nothing. It's nothing satanic. It's nothing evil. It is literally just an observable thing that we see, and then Newton, based on observations, he came up with equations that describe what happened. He didn't know why it happened, but he could see the observation, and he created the law of gravitational attraction, which perfectly describes how and why things fall. But now we know that there's more to it. there's nothing satanic. I really just don't see when you said God, Satan, gravity. It's like one of these is not like the other.
Well, the thing is, gravity has this seemingly preferential ability to differentiate between the same water that's in a huge mass of the ocean and leave the same water that's in, say, like an insect alone. That's godlike selectivity and metaphysical mysticism at that point. It's something that you can never understand on a logical level. That's metaphysics.
I disagree because I understand it. It makes perfect sense to me because it's to do with the mass, all right? Try and think of it as every molecule of water has the same force of gravity acting on it. So how many molecules of water are there in the ocean compared to the amount of molecules of water that there are in an insect? There's not many. So there's not as much gravitational force acting on the molecules of water because there's less of them. Individually, they all have the same gravitational force acting on them. But
that's like saying
the material doesn't matter. It doesn't care if it's water, gold, piss. It doesn't give a shit. The gravitational force acts on the mass of the thing, and the mass of the thing doesn't care what it's made of.
But that's a force without anything consistent to act on. That's like saying, I'll eat shrimp, but I won't eat shrimp if it's in a huge mass in the buffet. That's illogical and inconsistent. It's the same thing with gravity. It implies some sort of will. And also this gravity force leads to an inversion. Most of the time, if you think of higher energy systems, you think of them rising higher and higher like it's flying on the wings to heaven. But now you have an inversion of the system that God created, and now instead of everything ascending upward, it's going downward toward the center of the trash can, the pit of hell, the gravity ball. And so this has, satanic mind inverting force, logic inverting force, and system inverting force as well. Satanic.
Okay, like you've literally kind of ignored everything that I've said about the fact that gravity doesn't care about what the object's made of. Gravity really doesn't care about what it is. There is no selectivity. Gravity literally acts the same on everything, which is why it's so dependent on the mass, because it doesn't care if your mass is made of water or something else. It's still going to act the same on an equal mass. So do you see why your argument doesn't make sense?
Not really, but this is metaphysics. This isn't necessarily logical. I just reject the paradigm for something else, like ether or something else that might be able to explain it. And maybe mass is
okay, all right. Let's move away from gravity, and I think there's a fundamental disconnect of you really not understanding what I'm trying to get across. What about curvature? You guys always say that there's no curvature, but surely by now you've seen all the videos that show that there is curvature, right?
I've seen curvature from distorting lenses, from atmospheric effects, but when you use lasers and other and infrared photography, you can see up to 1,000 miles of flat land, no angling, and no curvature. So at best, curvature is, another Pythagorean assumption from dedication to man-made instruments and what they appear to be telling us, as opposed to using logic and God-given common sense for Pythagorean, mathematically made man's instruments.
Okay, so curvature has been shown in many different ways. All this fuss about every flat earther seems to be going out doing laser tests right now and getting all excited because they can see a laser. But the thing about laser and infrared is they're still wavelengths of light and subject to refraction, which by now I think is clear something that flat earthers really don't understand. So I'm pretty sure everyone in the audience knows what's coming by now, but I'd just like you to watch a quick video and then tell me how that doesn't show that there's curvature. Okay, ready?
If you're seeing through this hole, through the next hole, and seeing the light at the backboard or at 17 feet off the water, the Earth is flat. If he's holding it up at 23 feet high and we're seeing the light, well, that's because the Earth's curved. So I should only be able to see it when it's at 17 feet. Okay, go ahead and drive down there, Enrique. You're going to hold the light there. Enrique, how high is your light?
17 feet.
I mean, it's as, we don't see you, Enrique. Lift up your light way above your head. Interesting. Interesting there.
So, there's no refraction or anything, that you have to really worry about in that test. It was a very simple test set up because it was simple, and it quite clearly showed curvature. Can you disagree with that?
No. Based off of the way that thing is illustrated, that light at best was hitting that figure's head. So what you're basically saying is for it to cover the 17 feet from where that light was hitting his head to where he raised his hands above his head, you're basically saying that man has arms that are 6 feet in length. Unless it was down, I guess, by his waist or something like that, which is what I assumed the illustration was trying to get at,
Yeah,
but not
that's
necessarily
the whole
representing visually with that illustration. But the thing is, as we know, lasers do need to be illuminated properly, otherwise they can diffract all over the place. And there could have been some weird atmospherics going. We also have other laser tests which appear to show flat level land. Where the laser was, mated properly, where they use the laser right. These things can go either way, but it looks like the majority of these tests show flat level land.
Right. Okay, let me get another image up that can actually show you that there is curvature that is easily seen. Okay. What slide is that? Slide 27. Right. So if we have a look at this picture, this is from a still from a video from Miles Davis, taken actually really close to me on Terrapin Law, overlooking the Firth of Forth. Here, the camera height was 210 meters above sea level, and the red line that he's marked is the top of the Forth Road Bridge. And those towers are 210 meters above sea level. Now, the hills behind that are 500 meters above sea level. Now, how is that possible? How can the hills that are 500 meters above sea level be below the line that is 210 meters? And now you can't say perspective or anything here because this been done with a reference point. That's why he had the camera at one height, and then the bridge tower was at the same height. So that's the reference showing that it is level, which means that the hills behind, which we know are 500 meters above sea level, are somehow below that 210. So how is that possible if the Earth's flat?
Well, we would have to control and view this over several different things. We would have to see if there's weird refractive effects refracting up, down, if there's different layers in the foreground versus the background that's leading to different, images that you see with your eye in each layer. Also, depending on how you zoom the camera, you can get different effects. You can try to focus it, say, on the horizon line, but as Southern Protestant said when he was citing Euler's geometric proofs, there's no such thing as a line because a line is based off of the definition of a point, and
There's
a point
no
is that which has no part. Yes, there is no such thing as a line because a line is based off of, a line that goes through, an infinite number of points in, I guess, the same, plane or whatever. But a point is that which has no parts, which doesn't exist in reality. So even if you try to focus on a line per se, when you focus in on any line, it acquires thickness if you draw it with like a pencil or something.
Okay,
Therefore, there's no such thing as a line that does not have thickness. So you could focus at the top of the horizon line, the middle of the horizon line, the bottom of the horizon line. Get all sorts of deceptive effects.
So, again, this is why there was a reference point used. This is why there was specifically 2 points that were the same height. And what that shows is that there is no refraction causing it. Because these two, the 210 meters of the red line and his camera, match up. And he's 210 meters above sea level is going to be away from the cold, dense layer of air that's typically above water. So there's not going to be, the refractiveness that you see at sea level. And it's just quite clear evidence that, I mean, no type of camera zoom can affect the background without affecting both the foreground and what's in the middle in the way. It was just taken with a normal camera. I'm pretty sure it was a P900 actually. And it literally shows hills that are further away but taller being below the height of the tower bridge, which the only way that makes sense is if there's a curve. And you
Not
don't.
true. If there was a curve, where is the angling of the structure away from the observer? On top of that,
Right,
if
right,
you
wait, wait,
zoom
wait,
in
wait,
on
wait, wait.
something,
Let me answer
sometimes
that first off. Right, so the angle, 69 miles is 1 degree on the Earth, and this was not 69 miles. So this is going to be less than 1 degree, which you're not going to see. However, the hills, which are much further away in the distance, they show them to be below that line.
But the thing is, you're basing 69 miles for 1 degree on an observer who's centered at the center of the Earth. You get angles
Wait,
by a
what? No,
central observer looking outside of him or herself
no,
at 2 points to make an angle. And therefore, you're talking about an observer at the center of the
you just
Earth with
broke
a shell
physics.
around him of 25,000 miles in circumference, and that would show 1 degree per 69 miles, assuming they can still see it and the thing in the distance hasn't vanished due to the limits of angular resolution of the eye and perspective by the point that you see over 25,000 miles in circumference away, or 4,000 miles in radius or diameter or whatever. So if you're talking about an earthbound observer and you're saying that a hump of Earth curvature is obstructing the object, you are talking about a person who's making those angles based off of his perspective on the ground with his personal shell of about 69 miles, I guess, away times pi, which is going to give you about a shell of 218 miles with a shell that's covering what, a mile or 2 miles per degree. And so you would definitely see that if there's a hump of Earth curvature that is curving away and obstructing the object based off of a human observer, especially if you're essentially saying that a curved hump of Earth is obstructing the object and making it lean away from you like it what? 90 degrees, 45 degrees. This stuff can get pretty complicated.
Dude,
but it just seems like a convenient workaround to murder the mind yet again and, make us stop thinking.
Okay, wow. That you literally just rewrote maths there. That was incredible. No, again, the 69 miles is from where you are in all directions, and that's 1 degree of 360 degrees in all directions. So you're not going to see a visible tilt of anything because the Earth's far too big for that. So look at the photo that I put up now. This was taken by Dazza the cameraman. Again, I think this is with a P900, and it shows 2 ships that are the exact same ships, the same model of ships, but the one in the background is either sinking or being obstructed by something.
Well, the flat Earth answer, one of the flat Earth answers for that is that the visual information is optically compressing at the eye line of the observer. To see an object in 2D, you need to have 2 rays come off of the object and be refocused on the lens, on the back of your eye by the lens. And so as stuff gets further and further away, these rays are going to appear to meet each other. And at the point of the limit of angular resolution around the horizon, the rays are so close together, they interfere with each other and appear to merge into one ray. And it's no longer treated as a 2D object. This happens around the horizon for all of the light rays coming from the floor, coming from the air, coming from the object, and appearing to at the horizon of the observer based off their eye line. So that the back is probably further, and most of the information below the eye line of the observer has been lost due to optical compression. Life is Short goes into depth about this in a 3-hour video about how perspective work over a flat plane based off of stuff like optical compression.
Right, okay, but this is a fully zoomed in camera.
Well, the thing is, he says this is where him and I differ. He says that you cannot zoom in on information that has already been lost because it can't the rays can't be basically spread apart enough. You can only peer into a zone that still has information. So if the information has already been lost because the rays coming from the objects are too close together, no amount of zoom is going to bring it back. But I would say that you can widen up the rays, with some optics, but even optics have a limit to how they can refocus light rays. So you're not going to be able to see forever, even with a decent camera. You're going to reach a limit with the optic.
Okay, let me get the video that this was from, one sec, and I'll show you something that's quite interesting. Process, download. Okay, so let me just put that in there.
Here is a video that I filmed just the other day with the P1000, and let's see what happens when I zoom in and pause as I go. We're looking at 3 ships out here, 1, 2, and there is a third one out here. So let's zoom in and see what we find. As you can see, I'm well above the sea level. The beach is down below me. I'm up high on a car park. Now we can see these ships coming into view, and all the optical zoom does is to magnify what is already there. It doesn't have any magical effect by bringing ships over the horizon. Obviously the ships are too far away to be seen when we're zoomed right out, but with some magnification, just like using a magnifying glass, we can see objects that are too small to see otherwise, or in this case too far away. But let's zoom in. Now the challenge here is, as I'm zooming in, I would like any flat earther who would be prepared to step up and accept the challenge to take some screenshots from this video. I'm even prepared to send you the original video if you want to work with that. Take some screenshots from the video and compare the proportion of the ship that is hidden and compare it at the different stages as I zoom in. Are we seeing more of the ship above the horizon as I zoom in, or does the proportion remain exactly the same? We can clearly see the crane towers coming into view and the bridge of the ship there. So we should have enough information here now to take a good screenshot that we can compare as I zoom in further. Even clearer shot now. Now I am focusing in on the ship on the middle, but I will pan across to the left in just a moment. So here is another clearer opportunity to get a screenshot of this ship here as I'm zooming in. And I'm going to zoom past it, and then I'm going to pan to the left. There we go. Are we seeing any more of that ship as I'm zooming in to the full 125 times optical zoom? No, the amount of ship that is visible above the horizon is exactly the same proportion as when I was zoomed out.
Okay.
The optical zoom does not change.
So, oh, that's the wrong one. Wrong screen.
The proportion of the ship.
Shush. I will get the right screen up. Hold on. All right, there we go. So yeah, that shows that there's no kind of bringing it back when you're zooming in. Once it's gone over the horizon, it's very much just gone over the horizon. Can you disagree with that?
Well, the thing was, the start of it was, things are disappearing over the horizon. You use a certain optic and you can bring back stuff that has appeared to disappear over the horizon back into relief, showing that at least at a certain point, it didn't really disappear over the horizon. It just vanished due to optical restrictions.
But that just showed that that's not the case. That video literally just shows that isn't the case.
But we enter into circular thinking by saying it has disappeared over the horizon because we can't bring it back into relief based off of the optic, when we've already met the burden of proof initially by showing, hey, stuff that we thought disappeared can actually be brought back in by optics. So that first burden has been met. Goalposts may be moved.
Right. The burden hasn't been met
because it's gone over the curve. but that's moving the goalpost after the first initial condition has been met.
Just to let everyone in the chat know, the crew of that ship are safe. They weren't sinking. It's all okay. No, the thing is, when you say, oh, it's disappeared over the horizon, then you can bring it back in, that is literally just because the angular resolution has become too small, which is why people in the past would use, eyepieces and telescopes and whatever to look out and see that the ship was there or if it had come over the horizon or not. And that video literally shows that there is no way to bring something back from the horizon that has already gone over, because it can show you what was behind the horizon when it was zoomed out and zoomed in. And that's what the particular screenshot was. Let me just get that back up one sec.
That is visible above the horizon.
Shush, Dazza. Yeah, so that shows that the boxed area was from when it was zoomed out, and he's taken a screenshot and just enhanced that, and then it zoomed in to show that there is no difference between when it's zoomed in and zoomed out. The amount of the ship that is visible remains exactly the same whether he zoomed in or zoomed out. Optics will not bring things back from behind the horizon. They will make things that appear to have become too small come back into view because they are literally just increasing the angular resolution. But they will never bring something that has gone behind the horizon, bottom first, back up. And the only explanation for that is that there's a curve.
Well, the thing is, now a new burden must be met. How do we tell the difference between something that has gone over the curve versus something that has vanished due to angular resolution? There are other tests that can break this circle. If you had a real hump of Earth curvature obstructing objects, you should see the horizon drop away. We see a horizon about 3 to 6 miles out. We should be able to stake a marker right there and raise up an elevation and drop from that point. But we do not see that. We see land that continues to rise toward eye level way past the marker, as if there is more flat level land beyond, and that at best the horizon is some sort of visual compression phenomenon based off of the eye line, the eye level elevation of the observer.
Okay, right. Bear with me, and I will just get some evidence that horizon does not rise to eye level. Okay, yep, this is the video I was hoping for. Now, bear with me. Okay, so water is level, right, and is a good indicator of what is level and eye level, etc. So if that's the case, then right. So this shows that, I'm going to just turn the audio for that off. Shows that the horizon is level with the water level when it's at sea level, right? Okay. Now, when he then took this up and got it level, it showed that the horizon had visibly dropped to what the level is. And I don't think you can get any more conclusive evidence that the horizon does in fact drop with altitude. Right there, showing you it exactly. The horizon drops with altitude. So you might say that, well, that's not a very big drop. But again, that's because the Earth is fucking massive. Like, big. Like, really, really big. Like, think of something big, but then it's bigger than that. But then think of that thing you just thought of, and it's still bigger than that. The Earth's fucking massive. But
the globe is...
but that's evidence right there that the horizon drops, with altitude.
Well, depending on how you focus on the camera, you can get some deceptive effects. In general, stuff would rise to your eye level. Otherwise, you cannot make logical sense of your 2D world. Otherwise, in effect, what you're saying is that stuff can be below you, but can appear to be above you and above your eye line, which is supposed to be an indicator of, what's above and or below you anyway. Otherwise, you have no real way to determine in this, 3D world what's above and below you. If something below you can appear like it's above you and converge down to your eye line, and something that's above you can really be below you and appear to converge up to your eye line, that's madness. Things converge to your eye line, giving you a very good indicator of what's above and or below you. Deceptive camera tricks are not going to stop that.
I mean, that wasn't deceptive.
For accurate, realistic horizon lines, and how to analyze photos based off of the horizon line. So this stuff wars against logic and it wars against sense. For the atheistic paradigm, that this creatorless globe allows people to go down as they go down toward a creatorless atheist hell.
So, all right, let's have a look. There's no deceptive camera tricks here because he actually pans to show what the case is. All right, so he's lining it up so that he gets it level, and you will, as a flat earther, you'll have to admit that water finds its level, which means those two tubes will be level, which means when you're looking at them level like that, you are looking at eye level. So there's no deceptive camera tricks because he shows you getting into the correct position. And there.
Hold on. Notice those water levels.
Yep, they're exactly the same.
The one in the front is slightly below the other one. So even if you're off by a fraction, you may get magnified error over long distances.
Wait, there we go. Exactly the same.
The camera's wobbling. How can you even be sure that it's really focused without a reticle? That's another thing about this photography stuff. Nobody has a reticle.
Wait. That's the idea. The idea of the water. The idea of the water is to show what level is. You don't need a reticle because the water, when it's lined up like that, that is level. That's why he's using that. And there's no wobble because I've frozen it on the screen that shows those two liquids being level. But when they were level at the beach, they were at the horizon. But as he goes up, here he is. Let me get that one. So he's got, show where it's level. All right, there, where that's level now, the horizon's dropped a little bit. And then as he goes up further, the horizon's dropped even more. I mean, it's pretty conclusive to me, and it's also repeatable that anyone can do. You can do that with 2 plastic bottles and a bit of rubber tube, to be honest. That's not a hard thing to do to prove it to yourself.
But you see people at higher elevation showing flat, level land that appears to be at eye level. Even during the Felix Baumgartner Red Bull jump,
that's the thing.
Like flat level land when you look inside of the with the camera inside of the craft. And also, if the Earth was spinning, we've already disproved the Velcro theory of the atmosphere, because you have 2 different layers of atmosphere going in 2 different directions, which makes that bunk and flies in the face of that. If he was flying above the Earth and the Earth was actually spinning, in the 3 hours that he was hovering above the Earth should have moved by about 2,000 to 3,000 miles beneath his feet. Yet he landed only a couple dozen miles east of his original launch point. This is absurd.
No, I mean, that all makes sense with the things I've been trying to explain to you. But I've just shown you evidence that the horizon does in fact rise to eye level. Do you have any evidence that it doesn't? Because that's not the only video that I've put into my list. I've got quite a few that can show the horizon rising to eye level. Do you have any that show the opposite?
Well, the thing is, we have a bit of a modus tollens argument. In the absence of the heliocentric pictures from NASA that might be manipulated, people are going to default back to their default senses that are unaided, which say flat, level, and unmoving. So unless you can give me conclusive proof of curvature that is not manipulated by a barrel distortion-y collimation lens a real curvature from a trusted source, unlike NASA, which may give us water bubbles in space, making it look like they're in a tank, harnesses, CGI, photo manipulation, and stuff like that that make them a little suspect, along with the Nazi Project Paperclip scientists who were a little occult and starting NASA. Then, in the absence of compelling evidence on that front, people will default back to flat, stationary, and unmoving, and hopefully
But do you not think that the evidence that I've given is quite compelling? I've shown you that things don't come back above the horizon. I've shown you that horizon doesn't rise to eye level with altitude. I've shown you that gravity is proportional to mass and is not reliant on an aether. So I've shown you a lot of evidence here to back up my case for the Earth being spherical. And is there any evidence that you've actually got to show that the Earth is flat? Anything that you can refer to?
And infrared imaging.
Right. So are you saying that lasers can't bend?
They can, but they would be obstructed by a hump of Earth curvature past which you would not see them.
Okay, bear with me 1 second. Where is that picture? Sorry, bear with me. I'll just get up a image for you which can kind of destroy the whole laser experiment argument. There we go. What was it? Slide 18. Slide 18. Right, so yeah, lasers bend, lasers refract, just like at every bit of light. Now, granted, there's been sugar water used in here to kind of amplify the what you're seeing, but this just clarifies my point of the laser tests are a bit deceptive because you're going to assume that the laser is giving you a completely straight line, but it's affected by refraction just like all other light, which means that it can and will curve over the surface of the Earth. So that means that you would be able to see a laser further away than you should be able to, because laser light, like all other light, can be refracted.
Well, the thing is, the burden, the standard for experiments like this is it needs to mimic as much as possible real-world conditions. So can you show me a sugary, watery atmosphere? If you cannot, this experiment is interesting as to what could happen, but it does not mimic real-life conditions. That's more heliocentric, sophistry to confuse and dazzle the mind, more to the point and that people think something is possible that may not be with sugar water. Just saying.
But it just shows the point that lasers do bend. The light isn't some kind of magic. The same with infrared. It's just light. It doesn't, it's not unaffected by refraction. So all these things you're going, well, we can see it with lasers, we can see it with infrared. That doesn't really mean anything, because the question I always have to ask flat earthers is, why can't you see these things all of the time? So you can see the Chicago skyline at some times. Well, you shouldn't be able to see that. That means the Earth's flat. Well, then why can't you see the Chicago skyline all of the time?
Well, it depends on the day, but also I'm not saying that lasers don't bend.
Wait. You're saying it depends on the day, which means that it's being affected by what? Atmospheric conditions?
Yes, the thickness of the air, the moisture in the air, the temperature of the air.
There you go then. So I can use exactly the same argument. I can say, well...
Not the sugar in the air, though. Not the sugar water in the air. You see what I'm saying? I mean, I see that it's possible, yes.
Yeah, but I mean for seeing things that the reason why you can see things sometimes that you can't all the time, it's because atmospheric conditions do change what you can see at the horizon. So combined with that and the knowledge that lasers can in fact bend, it says to me that laser tests aren't a definitive answer to anything like the way that flat earthers are trying to claim that it is.
Well, we can cobble together, stuff based off of our presuppositions. You can cobble together that sugar water along with lasers bending to say that it's going to bend perfectly around the globe. I'm going to probably reject that and say, show me, real atmospheric conditions, not sugar water, and show it perfectly matching the curvature of the globe and meeting your eye without hitting a hump of Earth curvature. That's the standard that I'm going to put for that.
Okay, 1 second. There is a video of laser bending in air. I don't have that one prepared. Oh, I've been trying to be so prepared with all these arguments.
Thank you so much for very nice.
Sorry guys, bear with me while I try and find the... No, that's another sugar water one. Right, I'll have to find the video I'm talking about another time. But there's one which literally shows, well, it's like inversion, and it shows the laser literally bending and coming back up.
Does it use sugar water as well?
No, it's literally in the atmosphere. It's something to do with, I think it's called temperature inversion. It can literally refract the light so much that it flips it. But if we're talking about light, I've got an image that I've not had a flat earther explain to me yet how it's possible. So that's that one. Bear with me 1 sec, and I will just get this prepared. Right. So this is Mount Rainier. And Mount Rainier is below the clouds, and there is a shadow being cast from Mount Rainier onto the underside of clouds. Now, if the Earth is flat, that says to me that the sun has to be below the height of the mountain, no matter the distance away, to be able to cast a shadow up from the mountain onto the underside of the clouds. The sun would have to be lower than the mountain. And that doesn't match with observable reality.
Well, I mean, it depends on how far the zone of light goes. I mean, if you inscribe a circle within a square, the sun's, coverage of light with the sun in the center would be the circle, and the square would represent the land at the bottom of the square and the mountain poking up at like the left side. You'll notice that the circle kind of touches the middle part of that line, which would be like the mountain, and would probably cast a shadow from there at the top part, while the bottom part remains unaffected based off of the circular zone of exposure of the sun's light. There are other things that could be involved here too. It could bounce off the ground and up or something. What's his name?
The albedo. The albedo would not be enough to create a defined shadow like that. I've had that argument before. In fact, I've gone through the maths with somebody, and an albedo of the Earth cannot explain that. What is this? Slide 20. Bear with me. I'll get up another example for you, which can disprove what you just said about the angles.
Well, already the sunlight and the way that it is scattered. What's that? Let me see. Yeah, that could happen with a circle inscribed in the square, with the circle being the sun's coverage of light and a circular zone around it, with the square representing the flat land that we live on. And the left side poking up is like the mountain. It's touching that top part of the mountain in the middle and casting a shadow in the top part while the bottom part remains unaffected.
But the sun would still have to be lower than the shadow, than the mountain, to cast something, like upwards. It's like if you hold a flashlight and hold it underneath an object, it's going to cast a shadow upwards. That's the same there. Well, the light source in this case would have to be coming from a position that is below the mountain.
It depends. I mean, this may be perspective as well. Would you say that the train tracks that are appearing to go up to your eye level are coming down towards you, or is it just an apparent effect from perspective? There could be a mix of things here. Chris Berry, as Wolfgang in the chat said, debunked this, showing that you can have, a shadow cast in a deceptive way like this by showing, a higher light leading to a shadow that's, on something that's lower down. He showed it, and also, what's his name? Rob Skiba demonstrated something similar with a higher light lighting the underside of something like those clouds. So this is demonstrable, and this meets the demonstrable level that these same some of these same atheist scientists used to discount God by saying you can't put him in a lab and control him and prove him, and therefore he's not real. So we got to be consistent, atheism or no, with these levels of proofs that we're willing to use. We have demonstrable proof that higher objects like the underside of stuff and cause shadows to go upward, but we're rejecting them because of this paradigm. And so yet again, you have to psychologically analyze these people to see what theories they're willing to adopt and which ones they're prone to reject.
Okay. Okay. Talking about the train tracks. I mean, this just shows you that they're still parallel, and that parallel lines never actually intersect, even though it might appear that they do. No matter how far along you go, the train tracks are never actually going to intersect. So perspective can't explain things literally disappearing below something. Now, it's still the defined shadow that cast. It cannot be because of an albedo. The only way that could be is if the light source is below the mountain, and on a spherical Earth rotating away from the sun, that is something that can be possible. Oh goodness, right. So I'm going through a lot of proofs here, and I hope everyone in the audience is paying attention. Right. So let's have a look.
Looking at the train tracks, you're saying that the train tracks wouldn't exist on a flat Earth or something?
No, but this picture is just to illustrate that no matter how far away it goes, they never become parallel. They never intersect. Sorry, they're always parallel. More importantly, there wouldn't actually be a horizon on a flat Earth. There's kind of no reason why there would be. It literally doesn't.
I was just saying, with angular resolution of the eye, you would get stuff that would set based off of a close proximity to the flat plane. And that would give you your horizon. The lower part of your vision has met its limit, while the upper part sets into that limit set by the lower part of your vision.
Okay, right. Let's move on to something more substantial. Seismology, an entire science, around tectonic plates and movements and measuring what's going on in the Earth. Now, this is what you get when, what you would measure from, say, if there's an earthquake. You can see where the epicenter is, and you have what are called P and S waves, which are reflections of the waves off of the different layers of the Earth. And the reason I'm showing you this is because using seismic stations, we can detect these waves, and then we can see where the earthquakes have come from. So if I show you the next slide, so that shows that no matter the direction where the earthquakes come from, it always creates these shadow zones and the particular reflections of the P and S waves. And the main reason that I'm showing you this is that those particular kinds of reflections are only possible if the shape is a sphere. It maps out to be a sphere, and actually gives us a good idea of what the interior of our planet actually is. If the Earth was flat, you would not be able to measure these reflections of waves within the Earth from earthquakes. It literally wouldn't make sense based on the data that we receive from seismic stations all around the Earth. The only way that you can have these P and S waves and these shadow zones is if the Earth is spherical and has an interior the same as what we've been told.
Well, I would probably just wrap these observations around a flat model. I'd have to look into this more, but maybe the waves are going through different layers of the Earth, giving you waves of shock, I mean, waves tend to ripple out in circular patterns anyway, regardless of the shape of whatever you're talking about. A ripple in a flat pond, has what appears to be kind of a circular nature as the waves ripple out in a circular wave. You don't necessarily have to assume a spherical shape. You could probably wrap it around the flat one too. But I'd have to look into this. But I don't know if it's necessarily exclusive only to a globe. These shapes, you might be able to wrap it around a flat model.
I mean, it most definitely is. In fact, I've got some more detailed analysis. I've been speaking with a geologist. Where is it? No, it's not Ravensall. Oh goodness, I've got so many different. Right. Anyway, I've got a lot more detailed. I'm going to actually do a video about this in particular that I'll kind of direct towards you if you like. But I've got a lot more detailed analysis from different seismic stations and that show that the shape is a sphere. It can literally map out as a sphere and not a 2D shape. The reflections and everything that happen are literally only possible in 3D. Waves are three-dimensional. They aren't circles. Thank you, Drew. Just took the words out of my mouth there in the chat. So this is direct evidence of the shape of our planet. This is direct evidence that it's not a two-dimensional shape, that it is a three-dimensional shape, because these reflections can only happen in a three-dimensional shape. Obviously, you've said you don't know much about it, so it's something for you to definitely look into.
Yeah, well, the thing is, the flat Earth still has 3D shape. I mean, the flat Earth model that I tend to go with is the Enochian biblical one that is, flat on pillars, reaching down into the waters of the great deep. It still has depth and contour and thickness. It's just a different layout, covered by the firmament
this
dome.
Literally maps a sphere.
The waters above.
It doesn't map any other shape apart from a sphere. Whether the flat Earth has a thickness to it or whatever, it doesn't matter. It's literally only possible to get these shapes on a sphere. Okay. Any more evidence that I can give you? More evidence that there's a curvature to the Earth as well. I've got. Oh yeah, the Mount Helen observations. That's a good one. What slide's that? Slide 21. Okay. So similar vein to the Terrapin Law observations in Scotland. The fact that, based on the profile that you see in the top right, the hills in the background should be higher than the hills in the foreground. Mount Rainier is higher than the Mount St. Helens, yet quite clearly in this picture, the peak of Mount St. Helens, which is at 14,410 feet, is only level with the side peak of Mount St. Helens, which is 6,505 feet. So, kind of where's the missing 8,000 feet of mountain?
Optically compressed into the eye line at the eye line station of the observer. Meeting the 0.02 degrees or less of angular resolution that make the two rays coming from that part of the mountain basically merge, become one, and vanish behind a horizon.
Stop. The elevation of this picture is 1,075 feet. You're not going to get any angular compression. It's got the details there. It shows that the elevation of this picture was taken at 1,075 feet. Okay, now let me... Bear with me one sec. So, what slide's that? Slide 22. Let me give you a side view of what's going on here. All right. So, Rainier in the background and St. Helens in the front, right? Yet we can see that Rainier is actually lower than the Mount St. Helens, which, when you do the maths, shows that it's not possible.
It's probably more complicated than we think with this perspective thing. You can have stuff in the foreground obstruct stuff in the background, like a coin obstructing the bigger, moon beyond because of placement. and relative angular size, along with this compression thing, along with atmospherics, along with the way that you focus, the telescope or the camera. It's probably more complicated than it looks, but with infrared, you see flat land for 1,000 miles that isn't curving away or anything. So this stuff doesn't jibe with other experimental evidence. And so the paradigm that I'm going to wrap these observations around is flat level land, with something else going on.
Except that this matches all the observations that I've given you. I've literally presented you with 5 different observations of the Earth being curved. Direct observations. I don't even need to bring up sound these observations. There's so much evidence now that the Earth is actually curved. And we don't have to go to things like lasers when people don't know the diffusion level of lasers, and they don't understand that lasers refract. We don't need to go to all that when we can use basic eye observations, like these ones that anybody can repeat. But
the eye can be these instruments too, and so we need to look into this further.
I'm pretty sure they have been looked into quite conclusively, and then everything matches up with all the pictures and everything we get from space. We can do the measurements ourselves on the ground and see that they match with satellite photos and stuff, which shows us that satellites and stuff aren't fake because they're giving us correct data. I honestly don't know how much more evidence I can present here. I've shown so much evidence that the Earth does in fact rotate and has a curve.
Well, people, are going to have, faith in their preferred paradigm regardless. Even back in the days when heliocentrism was really starting to pick up, back in like the 1700s or whatever, Tycho Brahe and others were saying there is no observed parallax. You should see the stars appear to get further away as you get closer to groups of stars, clusters, and appear to converge as you get further away from them as you revolve through space, but we don't observe this.
Except we do.
The lack of parallax,
we do.
People telling people who didn't believe in this paradigm that, well, even though the data doesn't match our observations or whatever, we are compelled to keep the theory and not give it up because of the ability it gives us to make other observations. So people are going to have faith and maintain their paradigms even when they're crumbling, even when they can't support certain data based off of faith. In this case, faith in helios.
All the data matches up there. There's no data that we can't support. That's the thing. And there is parallax. That's the thing. There is parallax. It's observed now.
There's heat shimmer from the Earth's atmosphere changing from day to day.
No, there's
not enough parallax to say this is parallax.
There's observed parallax that matches exactly what we should see. In fact, when you look at ancient almanacs going back depicting positions of stars in the sky, you even see that the North Pole has shifted position, matching our model of going through the galaxy at the speeds we say it has. And this is direct observations of sailors going back centuries in historical almanacs. So there is movement of the stars in the sky. There is observable parallax. In fact, even throughout the year, the North Star kind of makes a little circle in the sky as it wobbles.
Well, you can see when you're moving, closer to something, if you have stuff lined up, as you get closer, they're going to appear to separate. And as you get further away, they appear to converge. We don't see that sort of parallax at all. We may have heat shimmer, which is called parallax, to prop up the theory. And so, we have to really test the basis of some of these theories. Preference, real observations, that sort of thing.
To quote Douglas Adams, space is big, really big.
Well, what about Olbermann's paradox? If space is infinite and filled with infinite stars, wouldn't the backdrop of space just be filled with infinite stars, leading to like a sheen of light from all these stars? It's just, wouldn't space just be filled with nothing but light from these infinite stars? Because there's infinite stars and infinite.
The universe isn't technically infinite. Einstein said that there's two things that are infinite: the universe and human stupidity, and he wasn't sure about the universe. And in actual fact, we've imaged the observable universe several times. We had a whole bunch of satellites that were literally just measuring cosmic background radiation to get the have you ever seen a picture of the universe? I can actually show you a picture of the universe if you like.
Oh, sure.
Let me get it one for the audience so I can demonstrate that I'm not talking rubbish. There it is. Okay. Save image as. So, if anyone hasn't seen this before, this is the observable universe that's been measured with cosmic microwave background radiation. I guess you could say we don't know that is the entire universe, because anything outside of that is kind of expanding too fast for us to ever see. But as far as we're concerned, that is the observable universe, which isn't infinite.
Yeah, it looks
that's a finite. That's a finite amount of space that, based on the expansion of the universe and how fast it's going, there's some light in space that we will never see. So, to go back to that, what you were talking about, yes, it's very likely that all of space is light infinitely everywhere. However, outside of what has been measured of the observable universe, the universe is expanding so fast that the light would never reach us. So we would never see that.
Well, the thing is, I mean, we could wrap this around possibly an enclosed, dome model. Probably it looks kind of circular, like there might be a dome there somewhere. I mean, they even talk about this symmetry that you appear to have in the universe, where we seem to be at the center. They call it the axis of evil because of their desire to take away man's special place in the universe and make us non-special. They really just don't want the Earth to be in a special place at all, and really it appears for the scriptures to have any sort of verification, and just want to make a lie out of the scriptures. So you can't get past the psychological profile of these people that are pushing these theories how they're wrapping their information. You can't get past it.
Let me get psychological with you for a bit, right? I think it's the opposite, right? Knowing that I am this infinitely small speck in the universe, I feel special that I know that. I feel privileged to understand that in the grand scheme of the universe, I'm so little, and there's so much that I could experience and possibly discover. It actually excites me and makes me feel like I'm part of the universe, because we're all just part of this massive universe. And in the grand scheme of things, we're all just these tiny little specks of nothing. And isn't it better to not know and try to discover than think you know everything because it was God?
Well, I mean, if God is the spirit of truth, he'll guide us in faith until we're able to scientifically understand it. Then, if we want to, we can go atheistic and throw him out after he's, gifted us with understanding. But without the spirit of, truth God, you don't even have, the drive to search or adhere to truth. It's like he'll guide us along the way to science.
See, but that's the thing. We are now in a position where we can say that we know it wasn't God, or at least we've got evidence to say that it was. We have better understandings. Now, I'm never going to be in a position to say, look, there is no greater being, that there is no higher power, or because I don't know. I don't know what really started the Big Bang. I don't know if there's other dimensions that could hold a different plane of existence. I don't know. But based on the observable evidence that there is, I see no personal reason to believe in a God, because everything that I know around me can be explained with physical understanding of science.
Well, I mean, we'll see. I mean, getting away from all of that stuff, there's other stuff that, doesn't appear to point to heliocentrism's model.
Like
we
what?
have a blue sky despite the fact, we have a blue sky despite the fact that purple scatters more readily than blue. Purple would be expected to be the color of the sky, not blue, because purple is a shorter wavelength than blue and would
Yeah,
scatter more readily. It appears that
but
we have a blue sky
purple
because we have a
is
blue,
purple's too short and it gets
possibly with bluish
yeah.
waters, but beyond.
Purple is too short and gets absorbed. Blue is the perfect wavelength to get through the atmosphere. And in actual fact, that's the ocean kind of looks blue because of the sky and not the other way round. Because I can tell you right now, as someone who served in the Royal Navy for many years, the ocean isn't blue. Okay, the water isn't blue. So if there was
That's why it's naturally getting us blue photos.
if there was these waters above, then water would be blue. But the reason why our ocean looks blue is because it's reflecting the color of the atmosphere and stuff, not because the actual ocean's blue.
I mean, it makes you think, just something to file away, you know. Because some of these, you know, we can tell ourselves a story and be like, okay, according to this heliocentric story, these are the observations that are available to us. Based off of, say, a flat story, these are the observations that are available to us. You know, it just depends on which story you want to, I guess, go with and which set of observations you can fit in. And so it's just something to file away.
Well, okay, so I mean, I've given lots of evidence to back up my position. Do you have any positive evidence for a flat Earth, and any particular evidence that you can point to that can't be debunked with refraction and things like that?
Other than the fact that no experiment has proven Earth moves, at best it appears to be ether swirling gently over the flat stationary Earth.
Okay, so
Laser.
all right, explain pendulums then.
Pendulums need to be pushed to precess, and they don't precess forever. The heliocentric
right,
model
that's the point. That's the point of them.
Because of the spin of the Earth,
Yeah.
they eventually stop.
Yeah. Now, of course they stop, because that's the point of them. When they are swinging, they're in free motion, and that's when they will show the precession. But they won't just start on their own, because that's really not how it works. You know, when it swings, it shows the precession underneath it, and the Foucault's pendulum that's going right now, and most of them in universities, yeah, of course, they use magnets to kind of keep the swing going, but that's all it does. The precession just happens on its own. And there is many experiments showing precession without using magnets or anything, you know, at least until it stops. There's, in fact, one particular experiment which I'm trying to recreate, where a guy used a stairwell on a block of flats and a cement brick as a pendulum, like a cement ball. And based on the amount of precession, he was able to calculate his latitude. You know, and there's no magic tricks going on there. Simply pulling up and letting it go, letting it swing. And then after I think it was 6 hours, whatever, measuring the precession that it had given. And he was able to calculate quite accurately his latitude and distance to the North Pole. And that's something that I'm pretty sure that I could recreate, and I want to. Because personally, I'm at the point now where there's all these proofs and I can refer to everything as much as possible, but I need to start doing things myself. And that's why I have, in conjunction with George Musser, I'm doing the Project Aristophanes, where we're repeating Aristophanes observations, but I've currently got over 2,500 people to do it on the same day throughout the planet as solar noon gets to each person. And what I'm going to do is, over 24 hours, I'm going to do a 24-hour live stream on July 27th. And then I'm going to collect all the data as it comes in. Everyone's going to live stream it, put it on Twitter, Instagram, or whatever. I'm getting together a team of people to kind of gather all the information from all these independent people. And Tommy Gronveld has actually made me a flat model and to program it onto, to show that if the sun is small and local, then all the data that I get from throughout the day will triangulate to one particular position in the sky. But if it doesn't, then it will map onto a globe and show that the sun is far away. And I'm pretty sure I'm even going to be able to calculate the circumference of the planet with it. And if just based on those data points, I can then calculate the circumference of the planet, which matches what we're told, then surely that is conclusive evidence, because that comes from 2,500 plus independent people. And I've invited flat earthers to take part in this.
Well, that would be an interesting experiment, but just keep in mind that it's hard to tell when something's dipping in, your perspective and appearing to raise and lower, apparently due to perspective, like the street lamps at the end of the street appearing to lower into your eye line, but not physically changing elevation at all, versus something that's actually changing elevation. And with the sun, this can be complicated. You can get all these people who have a personal perspective and a personal, angle of the sun. And it may not necessarily map the way we would expect. So we just have to keep that in mind.
That is why that's why I'm getting everyone to do it at solar noon. Okay, so you can get everyone can get the same measurement based on the position of the sun in the sky, because everyone's solar noon is going to be relevant to them, which means that they should get something that matches up. And the beautiful thing about this experiment, Lemonbird, is that if the Earth is flat, then it's going to show it. And if my experiment, if my experiment shows that the Earth is flat, then I'm going to change my channel to a flat Earth channel.
Well, the thing is, you might want to keep in mind the subsolar points as well, because that appears to be with the sun overhead, as opposed to, say, solar noon for this person over here with the sun, 30 degrees in the sky. I think you'd only get like a ring of rotation over a flat plane with subsolar points. With somebody like at 60 degrees latitude or something like that, viewing the sun low in the sky at solar noon, that'll be different than somebody under the subsolar point at noon, potentially. But it's just something to keep in mind.
Well, like I said, if when this happens and I use the data to calculate a circumference and it just turns out to be the same as what we're told, that's some pretty big coincidence. And I know a lot of flat earthers are saying that it can be, Eratosthenes' experiment can show a flat earth as well. And you know what, with 2 sticks in the ground, yeah, it works on a flat earth as well. But Slice Barcane did this with, I think, 23, and I'm doing it with over 2,500. And the data will show one way or another what the truth is. And I'm not making any presumptions here. I am literally letting the data speak for itself. What the data shows me is what I'm going to go with. If the data shows me that the sun is small and local, then I am the next flat earther.
Well, I mean, welcome to the club. Either way, it happens.
But the same way, I would hope that if my data shows that the Earth isn't flat, I would hope that some flat earthers would look at it as conclusive. Would you add your data to my experiment, Lemonbird? Would you get involved?
I'm good, but I'd love to see the data. It looks like it would be very fascinating.
See, this is why I've asked so many flat earthers, and they're all like, "No, I don't really want to get involved," and it just makes me think that they're afraid of what the result could be. Like I said, I'm not making any presumptions. The only presumption I'm going to make is if it is a globe, then I can calculate a circumference. And I would do that.
Yeah, and you could be right about that. People have faith in the things that they think are true, and it's hard to see them possibly dismantled, be them this, that, or the third. But it would be interesting to see the observations. But we shall see.
Well, July 27th, that's the date I've got it set for at the moment, depending on weather. The weather's looking good as far as we can see that far in advance. But so on the 27th, if anyone actually watching wants to get involved, the more the merrier. Frankly, the more data points that I have, the more conclusive the result would be. So if anyone wants to get involved, then please send an email to fighttheflatearth@gmail.com. And I'll get back to you guys within the next week or so, because I've got so many emails about it that it's actually a lot of hard work. Right, Lemonbird, I think we've kind of reached an impasse, really, haven't we?
Well, I mean, we got to present the two sides, and people will get to choose Team Flat or Team Globe, or some combination thereof.
Yeah, well, there's more and more people leaving Flat Earth every day. I've got a list of ex-Flat Earthers that I'm due to interview. What do you say about NASA going back to the moon in 2024?
We'll see.
We'll see. What happens if it gets to 2024 and they do it? What do you say then?
Well, they could do it similar to what appears to happen back in the, the 60s, when they had, a really good, producer of the day like Stanley Kubrick, make the thing look convincing. But I don't know what they do in this age of digital technology. Maybe they get like a really popular YouTuber to, cobble it together using Photoshop or whatever. But we'll see. With the firmament in the way, it's hard to believe that you can get beyond the.
Right. Okay. So let's talk about the firmament then, right? So obviously you prescribe to the fact that there is a firmament. You also don't think that gravity is a thing. Okay. So how is it?
An interaction between the medium and the object that it's in. It's something from the medium as opposed to.
What is creating the pressure gradient that we have? Because if we're in an enclosed container, then you shouldn't have a progressively less dense amount of air as you go up. And the interesting thing is that this gradient happens above deserts and above rainforests, so it's nothing to do with air being created by trees or plants, whatever that I've tried to that people tried to say to me. It is literally just a pressure gradient that exists everywhere in the world that goes from 14.7 psi to 0 psi. So how is that possible if there's a physical barrier?
It's probably the stack of atoms that are on top of the layer. Right next to the firmament, you have a thin layer and a thin stack of atoms, and as you go down progressively, the stack gets bigger and bigger. If you take a graduated cylinder and fill it with water.
My question is, the atoms at the top, what's pulling them down? Why are they going...
They're being... well, probably something like ether, vortex, gravity, energy levels. They're probably just being supported
vortex,
by the
gravity, energy levels. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Ether, vortex, gravity, energy levels. That's a new one.
It's been better than selective gravity that recognizes the same water differently than the same water in an organism.
I'm pretty sure that
I mean, what exactly
it's not selective.
What exactly makes the gravity attract my feet as opposed to, say, my center of mass in the middle of my belly? Why doesn't it just pull me down to the ground like a snake? And why aren't I just, trying to escape its clutches, as it pulls me down?
Gravity is dependent on your mass, as I've explained. It's a relationship between the mass of the Earth and it's a relationship between the mass of the Earth and the mass of your body. Every molecule in your body, it has the same gravitational force acting on it at the same time.
So with godless unguided evolution, do you think that we would be, this bipedal organism or just this massive jelly pulled down to the gravity floor? I think we'd be more likely to be that than a designed bipedal organism up with this gravity. If gravity was, this, force.
Apart from your massive misunderstanding of gravity there, if our form is so amazing and perfect, why did I have to have my appendix removed?
Well, we degenerate due to various things.
Why does nobody need an appendix? Why is an appendix now literally a pointless organ that can kill you? Why do we have an appendix?
Well, we have an appendix because it stores bacteria just in case, our good bacteria get wiped out by dysentery and stuff.
Okay, but now, I don't have an appendix anymore. The appendix is there because we used to need it. We used to need that extra amount of insulin and stuff. But we don't anymore because we're not hunter-gatherers anymore. The appendix is a fastidious organ. It has no use for modern day humanity, and it nearly killed me. So no, the human body isn't very well designed. My body is a perfect example of it not being very well designed. I was in so much pain with my shoulder that I didn't notice that I had an injury to my knee as bad as it was. So my body just bloody destroyed itself. If the body is such a perfectly designed thing, then there's so many questions that I've got, and I would frankly like a refund.
Well, I mean, the thing is, sometimes it's the choices that we make. We can have a beautifully designed Rolls Royce BMW, but if you put, sugar or honey in the tank, it's using it the way that it's not designed, and it will, degenerate and probably be destroyed.
Why
If
do
we
I have
have,
wisdom
these
teeth?
terrible wisdom teeth, with our, mineral poor diets, they're probably gonna, decay and, probably,
No. Why do we have them?
Art.
Because
We,
most people's mouths aren't big enough for wisdom teeth. So why
yeah,
is your body putting teeth in your mouth that there's no space for?
because we were probably designed to be bigger organisms and degenerated throughout time from the perfect, cosmic Adam
Isn't
and
isn't
or
isn't
Eve.
that evolution? Isn't changing
Uh,
gradually evolution?
it would be degeneration if it's
Right. Okay. Right.
a
Let
direction
me
away from
ask
what
you
we're
a question.
behind.
All right. Is it possible that I mean I'm not religious. I don't believe in God, but is it possible that evolution is part of God's design?
I believe so. I believe that God has designed an organism with a lot of variability, but you're not going to get this metamorphosis from reptile to, man. You're going to get a fish evolve into another type of fish, a man evolve into another a type of man, based off of the design imprint from the designer.
So you're saying that there could be some form of evolution that was a blueprint from a designer.
Yes,
I mean, the
I
thing
believe.
is, you don't have to be religious and discount evolution. And it's one thing that I kind of get extremely confused about because there's nothing to say that if God is real, then evolution isn't something that he programmed into all species. We've got evidence that our DNA has changed over time. We've got vestigial codes in our DNA that aren't used anymore, that are similar
But
to stuff in all that we find all over the world. There's so much evidence for evolution to be a thing that I think even as someone who's religious, it's pretty stupid to discount evolution.
Well, the proof that we have of quote unquote evolution appears to be of a degenerative type. Birds that can no longer fly, that lose size, that get smaller. Bacteria that lose, certain segments of DNA that, would code for something that reacts to a protein or an antibiotic, making them
Okay.
more or less susceptible or whatever.
All right,
But, not
on the other end of that, you've got
by
giraffes that have longer necks so that they could reach nourishment other species couldn't. You've got monkeys that are equipped to hang around trees and stuff because they've got basically an extra appendage with their tail. There's plenty. Evolution isn't improving. That's not what evolution is. Evolution is adapting to what is happening. And if the environment changes require you to be smaller, say for instance, something happened and there was a lot less nourishment in the world, right? What's more likely to survive? A massive creature that needs to take in a whole bunch of nourishment, or a tiny little creature that doesn't need as much nourishment?
a tiny little creature, but the thing is, we've never seen
Exactly.
evolution happen. And so it takes
Well,
faith to
actually, no,
believe
we
that
most certainly
organisms can
has.
metamorphose
There's
beyond certain
there's
bounds.
there's finches on islands near Antarctica that have been observed to change within our lifetime.
Yeah, but they're still birds. They haven't metamorphosed into a human.
No, because that's not how it's not going to boom. It's a gradual change, over millions of years. If the Earth got really really hot, children that could deal with the heat better would be more likely to survive, and that would be a trait more likely to be passed over. But that change would take millions and millions of years.
Well, the thing is, we've had experiments with bacteria reproducing over millions of generations, and you still have bacteria. Those bacteria didn't turn into a protist, didn't turn into a fungi, and they reproduce a whole lot more than humans. So if these,
Why would they need to
extremely prolific, bacteria cannot evolve beyond their bacteria bounds, how can humans expect to, with
again,
half of the generation, a third of the generations or whatever, and a third of the time? This is absurd.
That's the thing. A bacteria has got no reason to metamorphise into something else. A bacteria just wants to multiply. And a bacteria, I suppose, would evolve the best way for whatever it is to multiply. And that's why we have diseases and stuff. And I suppose you could say a direct evidence of evolution is the fact that we have to have different flu shots each time, because the influenza virus can adapt to the immunizations and stuff. Isn't that evolution? Am I being stupid there? I mean, that seems like evolution to me.
And it's a good evolution if, it gives it a beneficial trait, yes, but does it give it a beneficial trait out in the wild? Some of these bacteria lose segments of DNA that make them less survivable once you take them out of these artificial environments with antibiotics and stuff. And so at that point, it's not truly evolution outside of that narrow confine. So there are problems with this paradigm where people can just evolve and metamorphose beyond design, beyond bounds, and beyond limits. So that's all.
All right. Okay. So what time? I think we've been going for about 2 hours now, haven't we?
Oh, just about.
Goodness me. I think we're probably going to end it there. Do you want to just take 5 minutes to give any final thoughts before I go through super chats?
Heliocentrism appears to be counter to sense in some ways, and it appears to be from a paradigm that is in some ways counter to the scriptures, with stuff appearing to originate, with water, with God moving on the face of the waters, versus this fiery Big Bang, explosion. Being moderately young versus millions of years, being defended by, questionable radiometric dating that dates something, thousands of years despite having died yesterday. And, things of that nature, with a geological time column that, is this soil that just stacked up over millions of years despite, stuff like upside down trees inside of it, human artifacts inside of it, buried stuff that looks like it went through the flood. And it may be symptomatic of an attempt to get away from the scriptures as opposed to getting toward the truth. So we just have to keep that in mind.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming on. Thank you for a sedate conversation. That was actually quite nice for a change. I suppose my final thoughts are, don't let not understanding something make you afraid of it. Personal incredulity shouldn't be evidence for anything. If you don't know how something works, that doesn't mean that it isn't true. It just means that you need to increase your understanding of what's going on. A lot of these arguments run around with flat earthers saying, oh, well, there's holes in this, there's holes in that. Whereas frankly, there isn't any holes in the heliocentric model. It works perfectly. It allows us to make predictions every single day. Our understanding of it increases every single day. Do we know everything? No, of course we don't. And that's fucking exciting. It shouldn't be a cause of thinking that people are lying to you because science doesn't know everything. I think the fact that science doesn't know everything is really, really invigorating, because it means there's more for us to learn. But again, it doesn't mean that what we know is wrong and we should just ignore all the evidence that we're given. All right, I'm going to read my super chats. Lemonbird, you're welcome to hang around whilst I do that. They sometimes can be a bit unfriendly towards flat earthers, but I'm sure you've gone through that many times.
Bring it on.
All right, bear with me. I'll just get them up. Come on, computer. Super chats. Oh, goodness me, I've got 2,470 comments in my spam. I need to sort that out. Okay. $10 from TigLogan16. Test his math skills, FTFE. Oh, I suppose we could do that. Lemonbird, you've got a triangle of sides 1, 1, and 1. What are the internal angles?
They're all equal, so the angles would be equal. It would be 60, 60, 60.
Boom, you are already ahead of Anthony Riley. Next question. Is 10 to the negative 17 a positive or a negative number?
10 to positive what?
10 to the negative 17. Is that a positive or a negative number?
With exponents, you divide. Like with a positive exponent, you multiply the number times itself a bunch of times. With negative, you start dividing. It's not quite symmetrical because like 10 to the 1 would be the point at which you start dividing. Like 10 to the 0 is 10 divided by 10. So it's 10 divided by itself. You said 10 to the negative 17, 17 plus 1 times, 18 times.
Yeah.
So you get like a really small fraction.
Okay, so
A positive.
It's positive. Well done. You actually, that's the litmus test at this point, and you've managed to pass both of them. Well done.
Oh, sweet. Oh shoot, went silent. Hold on.
Okay, sorry, can you hear? Sorry, can you hear me? You there?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I disconnected my microphone again, my bad. Yeah, $5 from John Lee Petmore III. He is, maybe. Hold his feet to the fire. Make him explain his flatland. Yeah, I don't think he can.
Good luck with that.
$4, $30 from Howlin' Matt, asking which other infinity stones are involved. Yeah, what are the, name all the infinity stones to me, Lemonbird.
Oh shoot, we have the space, time, reality, power, shoot, mind, and I want to say I probably said space already. Time.
You said time.
I did.
One
time,
more.
power, space.
You have to go to
reality,
Volmore to get it and speak to Red
power.
Skull.
Oh shoot, the green one.
No, the yellow one.
Time, power. Oh, the crap. Time, reality, space, and power, and I forgot the last one. Damn. Did I say reality?
You said reality. Yeah. So we've got time, space, reality, power, mind, and the other one is soul. Soulstone.
Soul.
Yeah.
Soul.
Okay. Right. $5 from Handmade Films. Poo poo PP. Thanks for that. $2 from Red Pastrami. I words big, therefore I am smart. Indeed. $2 Australian from Shadox Gaming. Ask him how waterfall works on a flat Earth. How does a waterfall work on a flat Earth?
It just goes down and level over a flat plane, like the Nile. It descends gently 1 foot over its whole entire course, but on a globe, it would have to flow up and over the hump of Earth curvature, going from the southern hemisphere up through the northern hemisphere, which is kind of ridiculous on its course. It's probably just flowing.
I loved your answer
land.
there, that it just flows down and over, basically. That was brilliant. $2 from John Lee Petmore III. Oh, for fuck's sake, Lemonbird is a verifiable idiot. Ding. $6.66 from Rangerman9404. All Flerfs are idiots because Team Skeptics said so, and he sacrificed many a dinger to prove it. Rip Team Skeptics dingers. $2 from Horsehead. Jeebus said my book is twoof. Yep, pretty much. $5 from Rangerman9404. I think he snorted a few of the non-existent lines of coke before the debate. No. Lemonbird says lines aren't real, so that can't be the case. $5 from Michael W. Rorbal. The utter stupidity of flat earthers used to amaze me. Now I just laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh. Yeah, that was why in my video presenting the world's first flat earth model, there was literally just 1 minute of laughter. $2 from Cajun Crustacean. Being wrong is Lemon's fetish. He enjoys it. $2 from Rangerman9404. Lemon bird brain, Snuff said. $5.49 Canadian dollars from Nicholas Kincarden. Keep up the fight, Colonel Gregg. Love the debates. $2 from Xanos Carthage. Lemon bird, I have an excuse for that. Yep, that's your quote, 2019. $5 from Leroy BB8. Word salad, anyone? And $2 from Leroy BB8. Paperclip scientists did not create NASA. $3 from Leroy BB8. The Bible is not a book of science. $5 Canadian from Brainy Beaver. Green Bullion, what number is this? Lemonbird, what?
I was going to say 3.
3, well done. Pay attention, 33 you see. That is not 33, that's 3. $5 from John Rapp. Lemonbird seems to have degenerated more than most of us. Cheers from Down Under. And I think that was the last one. Let me just refresh. And another one, $5 from Jeffrey Greyjack. Thanks for the very informative and entertaining debate discussion. Thanks to Lemonbird for a civil discussion debate. Yes, thank you very much, Lemonbird. That was actually a lot more civil than many flat earthers and not too much talking over and stuff. So thank you very much for that. Guys, I will be back tomorrow with a new video on Daniel Pratt. He gets his own episode of Flerfs Are Idiots. And I will also be debating Spurs Chemo at midnight. Oh, Marvel Girl, you're in the chat. Did I hear you just had a video out? Because if that is the case, Marvel Girl, then please post the link to that video in the chat so everyone can go and check it out after this. Let me have a look, because I know I saw something coming on. Yes. Marvel Girl questions Nathan. Right. Marvel Girl has a new video out, everybody. DEFCON 1. We are at DEFCON 1. Marvel Girl's video. Link in the chat. Everyone go and check out Marvel Girl's video. Thanks, guys, for watching. Thank you again, Lemonbird. Everyone, remember that stupidity is not a right. And fight the flat earth.
Fight the flat, fight the flat, fight the flat, fight the flat.